Welcome to the voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
And the only thing that popped into my head when I hear about unrealized potential was my chipping fingernail polish, because it takes up headspace. and you know, we're going to talk a little bit about that, because it could be that, it could be a client that pulled out, it could be an unexpected fire at your business. In addition to all of that, when we do have work time, do we protect it? How do we show up in it? So stuff like that seems awfully little, can stay little and not even take up any headspace at all. That is an important concept for this program 236, Productivity, Time, and More. You're in the right place for conversations about the needs that we as current leaders face, the little needs as well as the big needs, regarding technology, customer expectations, quickly changing markets, and kind of sometimes fun life stories too. This program is all about what it means to reach our short-term goals and keep in mind our long-term positioning. Today with me, I'm super excited to have him back, is Joe Workman, an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, and he lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. He is a technology entrepreneur and enjoys an indie life. He runs his business, he's a family man, and he does it all at the same time. He empowers web designers through his tools and technology, as well as small business that use his tools and technology to build websites with zero code. Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you very much, Jess. And I have to say, I hate it when my nail polish chips too. It just sucks. You know,
I'm telling you.
You go through all that work, you know, especially when you get like the gel nails, you know.
That's the problem. I can't take it off now because they're the gel nails. I'm impressed of how much you know about this manicure process, I must admit. I don't do fingernail polish very often because I hate that part. I don't want to have to think about it, right? Oh, man. Well, so we're going to just jump right in now that we've covered all of your fingernail polish knowledge and mine.
Excellent.
Excellent. And I want to know, how do you ensure that your work time is productive day to day?
It's a challenge, you know, because I work from home, especially right now. It's summertime, right? And I have 3 kids home all day long, and trying to stay productive is very difficult, right? And so basically, you know, what I try to do is I guess my number one tip, especially if you have kids at home and you're trying to be productive, and this works if you don't have kids, but set a goal for one thing you want to do that day and get it done as early as possible in the morning, right? If you can, because, you know, stuff just happens during the day. And, you know, if you get it done in the morning, that one thing that you wanted to get done that day, if you get it done early, then the rest of the day is just gravy, you know? So I think it's really important to, you know, find one thing to make you feel like if you do that one thing today, you have to say that today was a success. And if you can do that, then you're golden.
And I think that bar changes for us day to day sometimes, and definitely quarter to quarter. And that's a great personal self-reflection every single day. You know, okay, so like you know, I also have kids in school, right? I don't have kids. I have a kid in school. And so you're right. When they're not in school, the way our house adapts changes a lot, which means the way I show up to be able to work also changes a lot. Yep. And so when we have this cadence of, this is what we think we're supposed to do, this is what we have been doing, this is what we've said we're going to do, and something throws a wrench in it, like luckily, summer vacation is not a wrench. It's something you can plan for. But whether it's planned or just this unexpected stuff that comes up with clients or family, we run into that. And so to be able to say, hey, we've got our one thing done.
Yep.
I find fascinating because, I carve out time. I make protected time to do that thing.
Yep.
And sometimes it's 3 things, sometimes it's 1 thing, but whatever I've decided, that's what's going to make me successful, that I know when I get to the end of the day and reflect that, I'm going to use your words through this entire show that way, is that I've gotten it done, and it required protected time. So do you tend to work a little bit more in an agile mode, or do you also say, hey, okay, got this thing, I'm going to do it in the morning, first thing, and then?
I try to do the first thing in the morning, right? I try to do that, but obviously, I wake up, first thing I do like in the morning is I have a bunch of customers, and I try to see if there's any fires that I need to help put out with customers first, or if there's anything big that I need to address before I work on my goal. So sometimes my morning is dictated for me based on if a customer's having a meltdown, I want to make sure that I help them first, and then I'll tackle my goal. But most of the time, I move straight into just trying to be productive and attack that, at least that one thing that I feel I need to get done today. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, and I hate to say it, sometimes my one thing doesn't get done.
Oh,
and, and that can happen for a lot of different reasons. And then I actually feel bad because I'm like, wow, I couldn't even do one thing. But then I look at the rest of the day and I'm like, oh, there was extra client involvement today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there was a call and somebody was looking for advice or insight unexpectedly. And I'll welcome those any day, right?
Yep.
Anytime
Yep.
I can be of service, I will take that. Now, when it comes to the work to move Red Direction forward, right? So the last time you were on the show, for people who haven't listened, we're going to link to the show because it was all about how do we stay on task and how do we reflect and make sure we're achieving the goals that we want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And that happens every day. And so if I can't get to things every day, that protected time I talk about, if it gets eroded somehow in a day, there is one time a week that my protected time stays protected. Yep. And at all costs, everything else will go around it. And it drives people batty. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. It's the only time on my schedule, because they know, they figured out when. I call it my present retreat. When my present retreat exists, they're like, but you can meet me during that time. I'm like, you have nothing to do with the future of my business. You have to do with right now. Nice. And I can say that to people that I know well enough because they know about this part of me. But it's one of those things, it's almost like meditation with if you're trying to do something new in your family, meditation, or cook a meal, or take a family walk, or make sure you get to whatever exercise or, game, if you're going to join a soccer league or something like that, to get out of the house. The first thing that happens is everything else goes and it tries to eat away at that time. And it's usually the thing that we put in last that's the first to go out, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Have you had that experience where you tried to do something new and it takes you months to get it done because fitting it in and allowing it to stick is actually a challenge?
Oh, totally. And also, the opposite is true as well. Like, a lot of times I'll be doing, I'll have a commitment that I have that I maybe I give up and I think it's going to release all this new free time for me. Well, magically, like stuff just magically fills up that time like there's no tomorrow. It's just like, boom. Like I used to, for 6 or 7 years, I coached soccer, my son's soccer team. And we were pretty good. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And yes, it ate up a lot of time. And we decided to stop doing that. And I just thought I was going to have magically like all this time. And magically, I didn't have a lot of time anymore still. It's it is magic. It's like, where did all that time I used to spend go? Like, it's like, so yes, but what you say is, you have your protected time, and that's a smart thing to do. I have to say, I don't do that mostly. I tend to just roll. I'm kind of a roll with the punches kind of guy. It's like, you know what? Like I even said in the last time we were on the show, where I have goals, but I'm okay just to, like yesterday, for example, actually, the morning I realized my kids needed attention and some daddy time. And I just kind of said, okay, poof, I'm just going to go, I'm going to give up and I'm not going to fight it. And I'm going to embrace that. And we had daddy time and I didn't work. I worked at about 2 hours in the morning and then I didn't work again until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you know?
Right.
And that was okay. You know, I at 3 o'clock, I worked on the one thing. I was still a productive day. But I can't beat up myself because I didn't work from, 9:30 until 3 o'clock because I did other important things.
And I think that's fantastic to think about. There are two things on and I like hearing that because for the most part, I like to be the same way. I do have stuff that shows up on my calendar. Most of it is adaptable, and it drives everybody on my team and in my household crazy because my schedule can change in 15-minute increments throughout the entire day. So nobody feels like they can keep up with me. And I'm like, well, the priority changes. The action that needs to be taken right here is not the action that my past self thought was the right thing or your past self thought was the right thing to make sure I was paying attention to. And so it opens up this concept of conversations around those things of, and I think that comes a little bit into like the culture of our organization and what we value. If we don't allow for flexibility and adaptability, what does that mean for our process and our connection to not only our staff and our teams, but also our customers and the people that we serve that aren't our customers too? Totally.
100%. If you're not flexible, then, you're just going to stress yourself out a lot of times as well. If you don't get something out, or done that you expected to get done, again, like we said in the last, podcast episode, it's okay if you don't hit your goals, right? And we were talking about mostly like quarterly goals, but now we're kind of like talking about like daily things, like
daily goals. Yeah,
exactly. So like, what do you want to get done today? And if you don't do it, it's okay. You know what? Get it done tomorrow, because if you get it done tomorrow, then it doesn't matter, right? Because you got it done. You're still progressing forward. And and that's the whole point. So
when we're talking about success, we're talking about seeing this forward movement. We're talking about visualizing an outcome. We're talking about being able to go get what we need to get there, but it's the getting what we need to get to that success or that end goal. That's where the achievement is. Do we have the skill? Can we actually show up and do it, use it? Do we have to make a new one?
It's also about having something that's measurable as well, right? Because a lot of times we'll set goals like, I want to make $10,000 a month, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Like, what are the steps to take to that? Like that's not really a quality goal, right? So that's also an important thing as well. Is actually making your goals, even for small goals for the day, like achievable. Like what is the one thing, if you do this exact thing, is it, sending this, 5 emails out to people, like something that's measurable, that can be like, boom, I did that and I'm done, right? Yeah. I'm happy I achieved my goal for the day.
Yes, you achieved your goal. Now, did you achieve the outcome and the purpose of those emails? That is a whole other level of achievement. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yes, I can achieve the getting the stuff done. So now how do I achieve the actual, am I achieving the actual outcome? And is it moving me toward my growth or my sales goal or my position in the market or whatever that, larger goal is? And that's, isn't it Stephen Covey that talks about the boulders in the sand and the stuff, right? He's got this story. I might have to look this up, and I apologize if it's not Stephen Covey right now for all of you listening. We will have the right links in it. And the story, it's of a jar. And you talked about it first. The one thing that you put in your jar every single day is the one thing you make sure you want to get done is your goal for the day. That's cool, because then what happens? There's still space in there. So what do you put in next? You could put in sand, but you could also put in a smaller rock to let it fill in the space, and then a smaller rock to fill in the space. And the last thing that you put in is the sand, because most people think that the sand, and by the way, I used to be in this camp. If I was dealing with sand all day, I was productive. If I was dealing with sand all day, I got stuff done. But I wasn't necessarily I was achieving those goals, that daily productivity, but I wasn't actually seeing achievement over time, right? Taking those days over time and seeing some forward movement to a bigger space to fill my role better, to increase my capacity to think or problem solve or make decisions around things that show up.
So I don't know if that was Stephen Covey. It might have been. I know Stephen Covey had something to do with the boulder. I know that. But I do know that. Have you read Atomic Habits by James Clear?
No.
Oh, okay. So amazing book. Everyone should read it. And he talks about a very similar concept where one thing that you could do to kind of help track your habits is you have, let's say, it could be any physical thing. Maybe it's moving marbles from one cup to another, right? So when you do something, you just move a marble from one cup to another or something like that, right? But it's a great visual representation of what you've done during the day, right? So you're physically moving and you can see what that progress is, so you feel better about yourself. One thing that I've done over the past 6 months or so is I've started, because one thing I always had a problem with is Friday comes and I feel like I didn't really do anything this week, right? And I just feel like, what did I do this week? I felt like I just didn't accomplish enough. So what I've started doing is I started writing down, I have a little journaling app on my Mac. And
cool.
It basically what I do is at the end of the day, I just write a simple bullet list of everything I did that day.
Oh, cool.
Right.
That's useful.
Yeah, either that or maybe it's even like sometimes I don't want to type, like I'll take a quick screenshot because I do a lot of like design and visual stuff. I'll take a screenshot and I'll drag that image in there as well. Right. So, and I try to do that throughout the day. And then at the end of the week, when I feel like I haven't done enough this week, I just look and go, oh, wow, look at all I did this week. It was a great week, you know?
Especially when we do what we do. Okay, so when we are not making widgets, when we are not packing boxes, when we are not tallied by the number of emails or calls or things that we're thinking about doing, right? All those productivity things. We're dealing with information and we're dealing with people. It is incredibly hard sometimes to recognize how much we are actually accomplishing. And that was something I would get down at the end of every day. I'd be like, man, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I just don't feel like I'm getting anything done. And that was suggested to me. And so I use a program called Day One.
That's the one I use as well. I didn't want. I use Day One as well. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to say what app I was using, but yeah, I use.
I was going to ask. I'm like, I'm using Day One. What are you using? Because it's really interesting to see and to be able to go back, because now we're making a cadence of what are we actually getting done, and we can go back and go, oh, do we like what we're getting done? Could we have more impact? Could we change it? Now we're thinking strategy, but that's in a different space than being able to go, yeah, I was productive today. So I'm listening to what you're saying, and I want to go back to that book that you shared, The Atomic Habits by James Clear. He has a fantastic newsletter, by the way, so I'm on it. I get his stuff. I recommend the way he thinks, because he's thinking about stuff that inspires me. Is that also what happens to you when you're reading?
Oh, definitely. I did the audio. I think I read the audio, or I listened to the audiobook on this one. I did also get the Kindle because, the book was good enough where I wanted to have something to reference as well and kind of look at that, and skim through it, which is easier when it's in text format. But my favorite thing about Atomic Habits, and I think it's probably my favorite book I've read in years, and it's now on my I think everyone should read it list. And what I loved about his philosophy, it's not like, how to form a habit, like go to the gym, or, whatever, right? It's not about the habit. It's about who you want to be as a person, right? So you figure out who you want to be. Like, you don't want to go to the gym, but you want to be healthier, right? So you have to figure out and convince yourself that you want to be a healthier person. So in order to do that, you need to go to the gym, or you need to eat healthier or whatnot, right? So it's all about figuring out who you want to be, and not about just forming some habit that you're probably going to give up in a month, right? And then and then on top of that, he has great ways of accomplishing your habits, and he systemizes it, and he kind of shows us how to create a system, because if you just rely on yourself, forcing yourself to do this habit, eventually you're not going to do it. But if you create a system that pretty much automates your habit, like, for example, if you wake up in the morning and you need to go to the gym, well, the night before, if you put out your gym clothes, right, and they're already there, ready to be put on, if you put on your gym clothes, that starts the trigger of maybe going to the gym, right? So it's about
Yes.
creating systems for developing good habits of who you want to be, rather than just doing random stuff that we think we need to do.
We tend to do random stuff as people. And that's such a good point, Joe. And that ties back to, earlier when I was talking about whether, and you had mentioned when you free up time, it gets filled up. And I'm talking about when you try and add something, everything else works really hard to erode it. And it's because of the habits that we have in place. It's because of the thought process we have in place. And if we're looking at something wrong, like your example of exercise or health, then it's easier to get eroded because we don't have the internal motivation to keep it, to protect it, to welcome it. Can you give an example, like in your work, of where you have thought about this process and implemented something like that for your business from what you learned from Atomic Habits?
Sure. So here's one example is about a couple months ago, I started going live and on YouTube every week on Wednesdays. And for a while, it was tough to force myself to do it on a scheduled basis. Like every Wednesday, I got to go live and schedule the show. And after about 8 weeks now, it's become, I've systemized a lot of things to kind of automate a lot of things, which automation I think is another key to being productive. Yeah, like another example of me not doing systemizing something is I have a podcast as well. And I do have a co-host, and it's kind of tough for us to schedule, but that's a poor excuse. But I don't have great systems around it. So like we do a podcast episode like maybe once a month, like, instead of weekly, right? But I have created a system around my going live and system of, what topic am I going to speak on, 4 weeks from now, automating the creation of the various thumbnails and all that jazz, right? So I created a system that allowed, that made it easy for me to go live, right? Every Wednesday. So by systematizing that, it makes it very easy for me to do that. So if there's less resistance to me doing something, then I'm going to do it.
It is about the resistance. And it also is about how much are we willing to show up? Will we do what it takes? Because I remember starting the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Our first goal, yes, we've always had a goal of having quality content, something that was immediately useful. My very first goal was, can we create a way to have 2 programs a week for an indefinite period of time? So we would know and be able to expect and to go. And I hear you exactly. And it took us a while. And I was like, and we got to the point where I was like, yes, we can do that, which meant, cool. We have the right resources. We have the right systems to at least continue indefinitely without letting it be a drain on people and energy and things like that. So great. So then once I realized I reached that goal, I got to start over again. Okay, so now with that, let's take a look at the content we have created. Can we increase the value of that? Can we allow for more people to have what they need when they need it and make it easier for them to do so? And that's really where we're at right now. And the answer is we're getting there, in my opinion, and our results that we can measure don't have the outcomes that we want just yet. So we're continuing to tweak. But it's one of those things that we've decided it's a priority. So the actions that we take are going to be around that priority. And now that we've changed and we're at that next level, here's what I'm seeing internally for us, is that we're slipping backwards. We're getting a little too comfortable. We're getting a little too comfortable. And I'm like, well, I wonder if the results that we're getting are coming from assumptions that we've made or habits that we already have that are being eroded a little, that they're being eroded because of what we've already accomplished. And either I'm not communicating effectively, we haven't figured out what the steps are yet to actually find which levers to push to get the results we want, or it's something we haven't even thought of because we're making assumptions that are preventing us from seeing that. And so that goes back to that protected time. Once a week, I take protected time, and it's a half a day. It's 4 hours. And those are the types of things that I look for. What are the assumptions? How are we showing up? If we're not getting the results we need, what might be underneath that so that we can continue to, I'm going to say play and be curious,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't have to be serious.
Yep. And if something isn't working or it's kind of deteriorating, maybe reevaluate your systems that you've created. Make sure that that all the steps that you've especially if you're delegating it out to somebody else, right? A lot of those processes, maybe some of them have those procedures that you've created are no longer relevant, or they've changed and it confuses the person, so they've deviated from that operating procedure that you've created in the past, but you didn't know because maybe they didn't let you know, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that's somehow where something is deteriorating. One thing, I tend to have the Superman complex. I do everything myself. I'm trying to get over that. I really need to. But,
we all have things we like to do ourselves. I'll tell you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always a struggle to relinquish control, and part of that is important to relinquish control is creating that system and then documenting that somehow, whether or not it's a video or if it's an actual document, something like that. Then you can pass off to somebody to redo, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a key piece. So even if there's this control piece in that, right? I like to do it all myself. Well, until we understand how it really fits into our business, until we understand if the idea is viable, until we understand we know the pieces that there are to communicate it, now what? Right? Mm-hmm. Now what? And that, to me, there's a responsibility that you're taking in that. I'll be completely honest. And I think some people are trying to delegate too soon. They have no idea. They're like, well, I got to get this done. But there's not a connection to how does this fit with my long-term strategy? Mm-hmm. If I allow somebody else to do this, how does this impact my day? And there's a question that people ask on a regular basis. Is this the highest and best use of my time? Well, you know what? If we don't know every step of our business, it may not be, and we may not be equipped to answer that question. And so I like to hear you say that, of course, I want to do it first. Of course, I want to figure it out, because then and only then, until we've done it a few times and we've added people to our team, or we've carved out our role, even if we already have a team of people around us, as we're carving out roles and figuring out how all of these pieces fit together as our business grows and changes, we won't know how to listen to other people's feedback or what questions to ask when we see what we've decided to measure success against or achievement toward, right? Are we moving toward our goals?
I run a couple mastermind groups, and about last year, I had a member that trying to think how I could tell this story without like giving all the raw details, but he's a good friend of mine, and he was trying to build a business where he was trying to copy himself essentially, right? And instead of doing all the work himself, he wanted to hire 6 people that were going to create groups, and he would just teach those people how to do the groups. But he hadn't done any of these himself yet. And we're like, dude, you need to just start with yourself. You run the group, and then as you get better at it, then you can bring on more people to run multiple groups. And he was very adamant. He's no longer in the mastermind group, but he was very adamant that that was the track he was going to take. And now it never happened for him. And I think part of it was because he wanted to branch out and delegate too early, right? And he didn't want to run the business himself for a while till he mastered it, so he knew how all the strings were pulled, right? And I get what he wanted to do, right? I mean, he's friends with a lot of wildly successful people that delegate everything, right? But they're able to do that because they're at a completely different level now, right? And when you're just starting out, I think it's very important to really understand all the ins and outs in your business, know how everything is done, so that when you delegate it out to somebody, you know how everything should be done and what your standards are, just as you said.
Yeah. That's right. And I know that we evaluate, do we continue programs based off of things like that? Do we have I look back and I'm like, oh, did this person take on something, or did I not communicate effectively enough? Or was there nothing there in the first place? And we've just ultimately the feeling that I get is, man, we've just spun our wheels because we thought we were at this place. I made the decision that we were at this place, and we're not getting results that we want. And now I have to say, we're not going to do that anymore, which impacts people's real life work, impacts their need and their place within a small organization like Red Direction. And so, and it happens at bigger companies too. There's a little bit more absorption and some stuff like that can occur. But when you're talking, under 250 employees, and we're 5, and sometimes 7, right? So we're 5 to 7. And, to be able to see that scale and understand the impact of that, that's real, that can be real heavy. And it doesn't have to be when we actually are really good at asking questions and vetting things up front, that thinking time. And so I know, I'm not sure about you, but I actually incorporate a little bit of thinking time in that self-reflection. My 4 hours a week is every week. It's at the same time and the same place and the same day. And then every day of the week, I'm checking in. And sometimes that present retreat is recording in my day one. What did I do, so that I just have a record of everything that's on my head? And then I also have that in that day one is all the stuff I thought of in the day that I need to have electronically, because the sticky notes all over my desk are going to get buried by more sticky notes in the days to come. And so you have some of that shows up too. And I think that discipline, that practice is as important as exercise and mindfulness and time away from our technology and time with face-to-face interactions with the people that we choose to have in our lives. And so we get back to the discipline. We've got daily disciplines, and then we've got those weekly disciplines. And then what does that, that rhythm look like over time?
Yes. I think, I have a think tank. It's called The Shower, and it's where I do all my best thinking.
Yes.
And, but it's true, because, you go in there and you're literally all by yourself, and it's a great place. I use that opportunity. I have a little chair in my shower, and I sit down and I think a lot in the shower.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It is a great place to do it. So if you never thought in the shower, go ahead and try it.
I know. Well, and sometimes, people are always telling me I get my best ideas in the shower when I am commuting and when I'm on the toilet. And the reason is those are the times you're actually alone and have space to allow your brain to have other things. So good for you for carving it out and saying, not only do I have the space, I'm going to take more time to be in this space.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, people always tell me that. My best ideas, my newest idea, this crazy hair I have.
Crazy hair.
Right. That's all I got.
That's why I'm wearing a hat today.
Oh, really? You're having a bad hair day?
Yep. Having a bad hair day here. That's not too bad.
Well, that's not too bad. No, not at all. I know. Well, we've been talking and we missed our break. So we're going to pause here because everybody listening, this is a perfect natural pause and a stopping point. We will be right back after this.
You're listening to the voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. Stay current and receive programs to continue sparking ideas about growth strategy by subscribing to the program at voiceofboldbusiness.com. Now, back to Jess.
I'm here. This is program. Yeah, I am here. This is program 236, productivity, time, and more. And we've already covered productivity. We've already covered time. We've already covered more on many different levels. And we're here with Joe Workman, who is a technology entrepreneur. And I have to tell you, these conversations are really important because they're fun, they're lighthearted, but here's the scoop. The scoop is when we get down and we dig in and we're looking at everything that we're talking about here that Joe and I have shared so far, there's more to it. There's a set of soft skills around discipline. Can I take the time? Can I protect that time? In a world where we agree with people all around us around how we're using time and when and how we show up within that time. And we're also thinking about decision skills. We're also thinking about how committed are we to ourselves and to the priorities that we have put into our role and into our lives as a whole. And I find this really fascinating because we could talk all day and we can have really great, useful conversations that you're going to take something away with, whether it's, Atomic Habits, whether it's day one, whether it's any other story that comes up for you that you're thinking about productivity wise that you're going to share with us, #VBB radio, so that we know, because we're talking about productivity today. There's more to it than that. We actually have to have a lot of self-trust to be able to have that discipline, to be able to say no to things that take up our time, to be able to say no to things that might erode and be something. And I'm going to go back to the very beginning when I was talking about my fingernail polish. I mean, I was sitting right before the show going, okay, I need to find 15 minutes plus drive time to go back to the place that I get my nails done to get this fingernail polish taken off. And every single time I think about that, I think this is the last time I'm going to get fingernail polish put on my fingernails. And, and notice I'm here again, and it's going to happen again. Probably not on a Voice of Bold Business Radio program day, but it'll happen again. I just don't do it that often. Every once in a while, why not? And that's the thing, every once in a while, why not? When you don't get the right results afterwards. So I kind of want to talk about that because while it's surfacey, it's indicative of other things, which, by the way, I have found in my self-reflection, and I'll be completely open and honest. The why not, I'll try it again, when it hasn't worked ever before, and it's not going to change, puts you into this really long cycle, doesn't it, Joe, of that Einstein quote, doing the same crazy thing over and over again. So if it's not instant, but it's weekly or monthly or quarterly or annually, and it still doesn't work, how come we can't own up to that?
Yeah. I think I made that quote during the last podcast.
I think you
memory
did.
Oh, okay, man.
I think you did. Oh, I love it.
See, this isn't the voice of old radio. You are bold.
Oh, that's so funny.
See, I promised myself I'd get that in there this episode.
You did. And It's awesome. By the way, you're the second person now. Somebody else came along and goes, I don't understand. Why are you talking about business because business isn't old?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I also don't work with old businesses usually. They're newer. They're just more out of startup phase. So it's the B, the buh, and the enunciation of it, huh?
Yep. Well, getting back to the story,
Love it.
I think that, what you were saying is another analogy is, if you fall off the bike, you just got to get back on it. Same thing with your goals, right? Your daily goals. If you crash and you burn, you got to get back on the bike and just keep going, right? Because the only way to move forward is to get back on the bike and keep pedaling. And don't think about if you fell down or if you failed that one time. It doesn't matter in the long run. If you still know where your destination is, the way to get there is to get back on the bike, right? You're not going to get to where you want to go by crying that you scratched your knee because you fell off your bike.
Right. And every time you get on that bike, you have to push off with your other foot. So even if you don't get a whole pedal in, it'll take you a really long time if you don't learn from where you've been going. But you will eventually get there by just getting back on the bike.
Just get back on the bike.
To the next pedal, right?
Exactly.
I think that's very insightful and thoughtful and graceful. Am I allowed to say that to you? Graceful. I love that word. For those of you listening, he did some sort of a ballet pirouette kind of thing. I don't even know the name of it. You rise to the occasion every time, Joe, every time. Yeah. And so then it comes back to this reflection piece. Yesterday, if I fell off my bike and I got back on, and I fell off my bike and I decided to give it a rest, when I'm reflecting or starting my day and creating the intention for the day that I'm in, can I use what I learned from yesterday to change how I'm showing up today? And seeing, is that possible? So that I can try the same thing to keep going forward, but do it in a slightly different way. And some of us want to take leaps and bounds, and some of us want to iterate. And both of those have great outcomes with practice and tenacity.
Another book kind of came to mind that I'm actually reading now. I haven't finished it yet.
Okay.
It's called Clockwork. It's supposed to be like a more modernized take on E-Myth from Michael Gerber.
Yeah. Okay.
So far the shtick about the book is finding out like what your in your business is what your QBR is, like what is your main queen bee role, he calls it QBR. And basically building systems around enforcing that one thing, right? So basically you figure out like what is your main thing that drives your business, right? And then, build systems around that so you can move that one thing and keep moving forward with that. So building priorities around, really figuring out what is the one thing that you guys really want to nail down. Like, and you as the business owner, what is your primary role, right? Figuring out what is best for you and what is the best use of your time, right? And then everything else can basically fall out and you can delegate that out and creating systems. He talks a lot about, creating, we talk about standard operating procedures and all that stuff so that, videos or docs that you can, record what you've done. And once you've recorded it, you can then pass that off to somebody else. Right. But you as the queen bee, you got to know what your queen bee role is and what is going to, the work that you do is going to most affect your business. So I thought that was a really great, thing to talk about today with priorities in terms of, figuring out you as the business owner, what is the one thing, start off with what is the one thing that is the best use of your time. Everything else, try to, systematize and document so that you can, obviously that, we talked about, you have to know what all those things are. So if you do them and document how you want them done, then you can have somebody else start to do those.
So I'm thinking about this in workflow because I could see, and I'm excited to learn more about this book, Joe, because I can see not only is it the priorities for the business model that has been chosen, so the role I'm in the business model that exists, I can also see it as I know being able to build around my strengths so I can build a strong team. And so does it address both of those things or does it just address one of them?
I know in the table of contents, there is stuff about how to build your team properly. I haven't gotten that far in the book yet.
Okay, but that's okay. So it covers both because I think workflow is a huge important piece that affects our culture. And if our culture is unclear, we also have that kind of stuff filling up our brain. What did that person really mean when they said that? Why is that person always late to a meeting? Don't they value the time and the thing that they said to be here for and they're not on time?
Yep.
Right? Whatever those things are, they take up headspace too, which decreases our productivity, which decreases our ability to actually use the time that we have, use the space that we have given ourselves the most effectively. So if I like systems, that's a lot of structure, infrastructure, which means not only can I bring that to the business, I also have to make sure that when it's time to actually act and make the systems run, that I know when that place is and switch to running the system I built instead of just continuing to create systems around the systems around the systems. Yes. I would say the same thing for action, right? I'm an action person. I can take action all day long, but but I have to make a conscious effort to act and then to stop and then to evaluate so that I've created a feedback loop around the action to figure out what else do we need to be able to develop an idea, make a decision about something that we want to do, things like that. And then another one is, can I get my head out? I'm in the clouds, and can I actually get out of that to take action or build a system? Right? Those are the three areas that I see on a regular basis. And if we know where we're at, first person I did when I had action, I'm all about action, and then I must reflect. Well, guess what? The first thing I did was I built an analytics around that. So if I'm going to take action and I'm going to reflect, I better have a way to measure what I'm reflecting on so that I can understand what action and systems would be necessary to get to this vision that I have.
Very smart. That's why we keep you around.
Oh, well, why, thank you very much. I know. Well, and that's why people call me, Joe. They're like, come on, Jess, we need help with this, because they don't know which one they are. Or they find themselves getting stuck. And it's actually sometimes they keep going and it's something that like takes all their energy away, or they can't get out of it and they haven't figured out that place where it forks off and says, okay, now we have to do something different to actually utilize all of this effort we've put in. Now you're a creator, right?
Yes.
And being a creator is hard.
Yes.
I'm actually doing a lot of reflection on this right now. That's why I'm like, look, I'm talking to another creator. You're creating your own intellectual property. Mm-hmm. You're creating something from scratch. And I know day to day that if, and as the days progress and they add up, right? So you got many, many days that I'm looking at and I feel through and I'm reflecting on and evaluating. I can find myself getting very heavy and like, oh man, how I'm not seeing what I want. Hey, I'm not this. Hey, I'm not that. And I struggle with that a little bit. And I'm curious if you do too as a creator, making your own IP and building the services in the community that you have. And if so, have you found, is there something that you're doing to combat that?
So I don't think I really have, I guess, creative block. As you know, like they say, there's people have writer's block. I have a laundry list of stuff that I could probably spend years and years creating and never stop. My problem is I need to stop creating and do more building, right? If that makes more sense, right? So like a lot of times, like I'll just create stuff and release all kinds of stuff all the time. And I'm release. And then like I have, 120 products and it's like, okay, well now, with 120 products, I should be able to build a very big business with that, right? But because part of me, it's just like, I just want to keep creating all this amazing stuff, but then like all this other stuff in the back, I need to build and promote and do all this other stuff, right? And that's something I'm desperately trying to work on right now, because I think that's something that is a limitation of myself, where I need to stop creating or at least slow down, right? And then take all these other existing products that I have and build that up, right? In terms of grow the audience and promote the older stuff as well, not just the new stuff.
Not just the new stuff. So the vision. So do you have a vision then around this that you're working toward that is getting you excited about creating?
Yeah. So part of that, like these live streams that I'm doing, it's about, going back to the older products and promoting those. Another thing that I did, I started with something called a deal of the week. So, every week I put one of my products on sale for, I don't know, 25 to 40%, something like that, to kind of promote older things, right? And to let everyone know, hey, look, here's a great deal. They save money. And with 120 products, I can put a product on sale every week and have no issues, right? Exactly. So that's been really, really successful. It's been going for about 2 months now, and I'm really excited about it. I've been sending a lot more email lately as well. I send 3 emails a week now to my entire group. It's been really, really great. I can definitely feel things are becoming much stronger, a much, better foundation and for growth in the future.
That's interesting. Okay. Because we have 236 shows in, 2 years, and I create other content in addition to this too. So I'm like you, and that's where it's, that's why I was asking the question. So thank you for sharing, because that's why I was like, oh, I got all the stuff. How do we use it? I've got all the stuff. How do we make it, and ensure that it's timeless and it can get to the right person at the right time for the thing that they're working on? And that's where we're at, is the in-time information, if you will. And that's kind of the thing that we're puzzling out. And that's going to shift and change what the Voice of Bold Business looks like for season 3. And we already know that. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet. So everybody, you've seen changes each time we do this. It's not going to stay static, because we're looking to evolve and have a channel that can really be supportive with the content that is being created. And how do we get better at that? And how do we make sure that it's seen and useful to everybody that needs it when they need it? Because just because it's on our minds, right, Joe? We're talking about this today. Just because it's on our minds today, it might be on somebody else's mind 2 months from now or
100%.
2 years from now. And I think that's really awesome to consider and think about. So I like hearing your strategies too, in terms of, here are the levers that we're working with to get results for the productivity that we're putting in place, for the priorities that we have, for the actions that we're taking.
And it's all about showing value to your customer, your end user as well. It's not just like, yes, the deal of the week thing it's kind of salesy, right? But
doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be, right? We're in a business, right? So, but ultimately, you have to provide value for the customer as well. So like these weekly live streams that I've done, and you do these live streams as well, and that provides value, and obviously free value, to the end users. So definitely the key is providing value to your end users or your customers. And then once you have value, then they'll subscribe to your various feeds or your content, and ultimately give you money for your products.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, whether you're one person or 1,000 people, it's still true. So the more people you have involved in that process, just know exactly where you're at. Know what the purpose is of the role that you have. And if you're unsure, this is a program for you. I got to get clear on why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I don't understand and I can't figure it out, what questions can I ask so that I can get better at this, because I want to provide value, because my job is based on the success of the company's success, and I have a role in that, and I can have responsibility for that. So that works no matter what role we're in, wherever we're at in our career development, our career path as well. All right, Joe, I want to know, what makes it bold to actually think about you have productive days day after day?
The bold thing is what we mentioned multiple times today is it's okay if you're not productive in a day. I think that's probably the most bold thing that we can say is that's okay, right? Because getting back on that bike tomorrow and making tomorrow successful, and achieve those goals, and I think that's the most bold thing that we can say is that it's okay not to get things done one day, as long as the next day you get back on that streak.
You heard it here. I'm really glad Joe came back. You'll probably hear his voice again and see his face and his hat again. Maybe with fingernail polish next time. You never know. This is the Voice of Bold Business Radio, and you'll find all the notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P236. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 236. You can also search the site for productivity, time, and more. You've listened or you've watched, and now it's up to you, because Joe and I are here talking, and we've shared some great information and gotten a little bit vulnerable today. So please also consider being vulnerable with us and sharing your stories, your successes, the things that you've stumbled on, because it's what you've done and you've learned already that's going to help us learn. And so we don't have to go over and learn the same things you have. That's practical application of information, which is one of the reasons that the Voice of Bold Business Radio exists. All right, so rate us on iTunes. Actually, it's not iTunes anymore, is it? It's Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and whichever listening platform you are on, and tag Joe, #VBB Radio. His contact information is on the show notes page, so you can talk to him and I about productivity and what you're seeing and questions you have, or more information that you might be looking for. All right. Now, I want to know from you, as does Joe, how do you ensure that your work time is productive day to day? With the caveat of Joe's bold, of sometimes it's okay to be not productive.
The Voice of Bold Business Radio gives you insights about how to achieve your company's growth strategy. When you aren't seeing the growth results you want, it's time to get an outside perspective. To discuss your specific situation around growth strategy, work with us. Visit voiceofboldbusiness.com and click Find Out More. Special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production. Thank you for joining us.